Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. So, today we're going to be reviewing my top 10 whiskeys from 2020. So, a couple things before we get into this top 10 list. I wasn't able to try as many whiskeys this year as I'd hoped to try due to being away for work. But, however, I was able to reach out to some distilleries who supplied me with some expressions to review on the channel. As far as rules, I don't have any rules for this, whether it's not owning the bottle or only trying a sample. You know, this is my top 10 list. It's not anybody else's. So please don't let that sway your opinion on any of these top 10 bottles that we are about to review. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into number 10. So coming in at number 10 was Barrel Rye Batch 3. This 116.7 proof hitter was one of the best ryes I had tried all year. It's an absolute flavor bomb. Totally surprised me when I tried it for the first time. I had to go out and buy a bottle just to try it side by side to see if there was some consistency, which there was. The distillate in here is actually aged from 4 to 14 years and comes from Indiana, Tennessee, Poland, and Canada. It won gold at the LA Spirit Awards, and it won double gold in the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. This is one that I actually recommend to any person that is willing to try a full-bodied, bursting with flavor rye. Whether you're a beginner just getting into the whiskey world or someone who has an advanced palate, this is one that I highly recommend, and that is why this one comes in at number 10 on my top 10 whiskeys of 2020. So coming in at number 9 on the list is the Uncle Nearest 1820 11-year single barrel. When you talk about a company who doesn't get the recognition that they deserve, you're looking at them right here. They even talk about 1820 being inspired by the world's best whiskey maker the world never knew, Nathan Nearest Green. So what's inside this bottle is some very complex, very deep, dark, rich flavors that just completely engulf the palate. Absolutely phenomenal whiskey coming out of Uncle Nearest. Everything from their 100 proof batch, their small batch, all the way up to their single barrel. The things that they're doing over there are just absolutely phenomenal. I believe they deserve every bit of praise that they get. I'm not going to go too much into the details of the flavors that I get because I still want to review this one on the channel. Again, Uncle Nearest 1820 11-year single barrel. Complexity, deep, dark, rich. Just a rich tradition, a rich history behind what they have here, and absolutely phenomenal whiskey that they've been putting out. That is why this one is coming in at number 9 on my top 10 whiskeys of 2020. So coming in at number 8 on the list is Barrel Dovetail. This batch comes in at 124.7 proof and is finished in rum, port, and Dun Vineyard Cabernet barrels. I had tried last year's batch, and it was one of the best finished whiskeys I had tried all year. You talk about flavor, complexity, depth, just how they finish this thing is absolutely phenomenal. You talk about the blending that Barrel does. It's top notch. This has a Whiskey Advocate rating of 90. Last year it won gold in the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. It won gold at the New York International Spirits Competition. The flavors you pull out of this thing are they're simply amazing. You get a little bit of everything that it's finished in. You get some of the brown sugars, you get molasses, you get dark fruits, you get some cherry, and then just the finishing on it, you get a little hint of tobacco on there. Highly recommend this to any person out there who is a big fan of finished whiskeys. It'll probably be one of the best ones that you try. I can personally guarantee that. That is why this one comes in at number 8 on my top 10 whiskeys of 2020. So coming in at number 7 is Starlight Distilleries Spanish Oloroso Sherried Bourbon. Now this one is a single barrel that it comes in at 111.4 proof. I can tell you this is probably the best sherry finished bourbon I have ever had. It is simply amazing. The dark magic that they are working throughout those barrels over there is outstanding. This is one that on the nose and on the palate, the sherry does not overwhelm the bourbon notes that you are still pulling out of this. You still get both of them. You get that rich sherry, those fruity flavors in there, but you also get their bourbon notes that still come out in the nose and on the palate. Tons and tons of flavor. This thing was simply phenomenal. I am going to look for several more bottles of this just so I can have them as backups. I had tried a lineup of 3 of their expressions. I had tried their rye, their port finish, and their sherry finish. The other 2 were fantastic as well, but this one was just the hitter for me. It was absolutely phenomenal. The first time I tried it, there's brown sugars on there, there's dark fruits, there's cherry. It has a perfect balance of flavor from your bourbon, and has a perfect balance of flavor as opposed to that sherry influence. I think it was aged for a perfect amount of time for how they do it over there. Again, Starlight Distillery knocked this one out of the park. This one for me is an absolute home run. Best sherry finished bourbon I have ever had, and that's why this one comes in at number 7 on my top 10 whiskeys of 2020. So coming in at number 6 on the list from the BTAC lineup is the 2020 George T Stag. Now this one comes in at 130.4 proof, and with a little bit of air getting into this, has turned into a fantastic bourbon. For those of you who have tried George T Stag and are familiar with that flavor profile that the Stag gives, this one I would say closely resembles the 2017. It still doesn't meet the standards of the predecessors from that, the 2006, the 2009, 2011, 2012, and 2016 batches. But this one can really still hold its own. It has a fantastic nose and an amazing finish on it. Again, it's one of the better George T Stags that I've had. It definitely is better than the 2019 and the 2018 batch. Again, it definitely resembles the 2017. I don't want to get into too many of the flavor details because I do want to review this one on the channel very soon. But fantastic release here from the BTAC lineup from Buffalo Trace. The George T Stag 2020 comes in at number 6 on my list of the best whiskeys of 2020. So coming in at number 5 on the list is the Elijah Craig Batch B520. So coming in at 127.2 proof and aged for 12 years, I honestly believe that this came in at the perfect proof point. Everyone knows that Elijah Craig releases 3 separate releases every year: the A batch, the B batch, and the C batch. The A batch tends to be a little bit on the sweeter side. The C batch tends to be a little bit more oak forward, has a little bit more than oak tannins than the A batch and the B batch does. But the B batch seems to be that perfect balance between the two. You're still getting a lot of that rich sweetness, and you're still getting a lot of those like deep dark some robust flavors that really come in here and attack the palate. This one does leave the palate a little bit on the dry side. That's why for me it didn't make that the top 3 this year. But I mean, really every one of their releases they're fantastic, and for the price that you're paying for a 12-year-old bourbon that tastes like it does, you cannot beat it. It's honestly. This is up there with one of the best, bourbons you can buy on the market for the price. Absolutely fantastic. Tons of deep, dark, rich flavors. Brown sugars. You're still getting the molasses on here. You're getting some really nice, creamy vanilla and some dark caramel flavors in there. Picking up some of those dark fruits. A little bit of tobacco here and there. Fantastic batch. From Elijah Craig. Again, it just really falls in that middle between the A that's really sweet and the C that has those heavy oaks on them. B batch definitely is my preferred batch out of all of them, and that's why it comes in at number 5 on my top 10 whiskeys of 2020. So coming in at number 4 on the list is the Foregate Batch 6, which is the Kelvin collaboration number 2. This one comes in at 126.4 proof and is finished in rum and cognac casks in collaboration with the Kelvin cooperage. Now, when we talk about finished whiskeys, these guys, in my opinion, are they're at the tip of the spear. The things that Bill and Bob are doing over at Foregate are simply amazing. This whiskey is absolutely phenomenal. Yes, the price point is a little bit high. It comes in at $199. However, what you're getting out of this bottle is quality. You're getting quality in each one of these batches that they release. They do an absolute fantastic job The flavors that you pull out of this are very unique. In a lot of finishings, you're typically getting maybe just that one flavor. Maybe that one flavor overpowers um, the other one. In this case, with the cognac and the rum, you're still getting, brown sugars. You're still getting molasses that's coming out of here with some of those rum barrels. Not too much on the molasses side, but definitely the brown sugars are there. But you still get a hint of that molasses, almost that syrupy taste, a little bit on the middle of the palate. And into the finish on this one is where you really start to pick up the cognac that it was finished in, and those dark fruits just play such an interesting role on the palate. It mingles very well with the finishings from the rum. And again, the best part of this is you're still able to taste, their bourbon through both finishings, not only just one finishing, but both finishings. Again, the way that they're doing it over there is just, it's honestly, it's phenomenal. I have the highest praise for both Bill and Bob over at Foregate. Fantastic whiskey that these guys are putting out. Batch 1 was phenomenal as well. Most of their batches have been just absolute hitters. Batch 6 is no exception. This thing is just, it's an absolute steal if you can find one of these. Again, it is, yes, it's a little bit on the pricey side, but again, you're talking about a quality bourbon that is finished in 2 different finishings, and in collaboration with Kelvin Cooperage. And again, the finishings just pair so well together, and you get to taste both of them on top of tasting the bourbon. Again, the rum cast with the brown sugar, a little bit of molasses there on the middle of the palate, that syrup-like molasses in the middle of the palate, the cognac all through the finish. Just the fruitiness it provides, the flavors from the bourbon still pull through all the way across the palate. An exceptional job over here at Foregate, coming in at number 4 on my list of the top 10 whiskeys of 2020. So coming in at number 3 on the list is the Jack Daniels Single Barrel Special Release Barrel Proof Rye. Now this one comes in at 129.6 proof. These are single barrels, so they are going to vary in flavor. But let me just tell you, this is probably one of the best 5 ryes I've ever had. I have been the biggest fan of Jack Daniels and what they've been doing for the longest time. I have said for the longest time that their single barrel proof releases are some of the most underrated, valued whiskeys on the market, hands down. You talk about things that are packed full of flavor. This one here is no different. This rye is absolutely phenomenal. This is the best rye I tried all year. Again, this one falls in my top 5 all-time ryes that I've ever had. Simply phenomenal. This one really is just, this one really covers, all the things that I'm looking for in a whiskey. Again, it's more than a name. It's more than, the brand. It's more than a fancy bottle. It goes deeper. It's what's inside the bottle is what matters. There's, the depth. I look for depth all the time in whiskey. Some whiskeys fall flat. Some whiskeys have a great front palate, middle of the palate, and the finish may be nothing. I look for, consistency throughout the bottle. When a little bit of air gets to something, it changes. I look for, those bold, robust flavors. I look for the finish in it. The different aromas in the glass when you're smelling it, a little bit further away from the glass, a little bit closer to the glass. All these things were things that I found inside this bottle here of Jack Daniels. A simply phenomenal release from Jack Daniels. Again, the flavors are going to vary, because these are single barrels. I recommend this to any whiskey drinker out there to go and buy yourself a bottle of this. It's simply amazing. It is, again, the best rye, and for me in 2020. Again, the flavors that you're getting on this one, though, are just, they're so different from a typical rye. You know, sometimes in typical ryes, you're going to pick up maybe some black licorice. You're going to get some dill. You're going to get some mint. This thing just completely flips, the script. You're getting some darker caramels. You're getting vanillas. Again, I had a review on this one. Jack Daniels had sent me a sample to review on the channel. That one was a little bit higher proof than this one. I tried them side by side, and slight differences, slight differences. The one that they had sent dried out my palate a little bit more than this one did. This one left a little bit more of a silky coating on it. Fantastic, robust flavors, fantastic finish. It covers the palate from front to back. And again, you're talking about value here. You're not talking about something that's hundreds of dollars. You're talking about something that's $60, and you can find probably in most most liquor stores out there. You can probably find them online. I highly recommend you guys go and find a bottle of this Jack Daniels before it is gone. Again, my top rye whiskey of 2020 and one of the top 5 ryes I have ever tried. That's why this guy comes in at number 3 on my top 10 list of whiskeys in 2020. So coming in at number 2 on the list is the Wild Turkey Master's Keep 17-year bottled and bond. Now this one comes in at 100 proof and is one of the most beautifully crafted bourbons I tasted this year. It was the hardest decision between my top 2. It could have gone either way. The craftsmanship behind this bourbon was almost unlike no other. When you think of something that is 17 years old, you think that when you try it, it's just going to be overly oaked. The oak tannins are just going to take over the entire palate. It's going to become bitter. That is not the case with this Wild Turkey. It's honestly the complete opposite. There's so much flavor still to it other than the oak. I mean, yes, you are getting some oak on there, but there's tons of cherry on it, and the caramels, the vanillas. There's a little bit of citrus that comes in through there. Beautifully crafted bourbon. Again, for a 17-year bottled and bond, it's just the way that this one goes across the palate. It doesn't dry you out, number one, which you would think, again, something that's 17 years, it's heavily oaked, it's going to dry you out. Again, it's velvety. It's viscous. Beautiful craftsmanship behind this Wild Turkey's Master Keep. Again, this thing could have gone. It could have gone either way against the number 1 here. But one of the things that fell short for me, and the reason really that this one didn't take that number 1 spot, all had to do with the proof point. Honestly, 100 proof bourbon. I'm more of a higher proof bourbon guy. Nothing wrong with 100 proof. If this one were just had 110, 115 proof, I honestly think this thing could have took my number 1 spot. Again, this thing does fall on my list of the top 15 bourbons I have ever tried. It is in my top 15 list. It's simply amazing. It's a beautifully crafted bourbon. Again, there's tons of flavor on it. It's viscous. The flavors are hitting every part of the palate. Beautiful craftsmanship from Wild Turkey, and that is why this guy's coming in at number 2 on my top 10 list of whiskeys for 2020. So coming in at number 1 on the list, the Old Carter Straight Bourbon Whiskey Batch 5. This one comes in at 115.1 proof, and only 1,648 bottles were actually made of this batch. Now, when I tell you that this was my favorite bourbon of 2020, that is a complete understatement. This here was craftsmanship at its finest. Mark and Sherry Carter spend an endless amount of time picking these single barrels, putting their work into whatever they're doing. But whatever they are doing is just, it's magical. It is simply magic. Again, this one falls in my top 15 favorite bourbons I have ever had. Simply phenomenal from the nose to the palate. This has everything and everything I'm looking for in a bourbon. Again, there's that depth, there's complexity, there's balance in the flavor. Again, you're talking about something that definitely has some age to it, but you know the oak is not overpowering. That proof point is the proof point that I was looking for. You know, that 115.1 proof point I think it's almost a perfect proof point for me. Um, it's just simply amazing. I've already gone through a bottle. This is my backup bottle. I am trying to find one more before I can crack the top on this one. Overall, again, the craftsmanship that Mark and Sherry Carter put into their whiskey is just it's almost like no other. Again, the highest praise for what they do. Again, we all know this is an MGP distillate, but again, it's the ability to go and pick out what they want in their bourbon and what they see in their version, how they envision it. And again, this one just it is insanely good. If you guys can go out there and find a bottle of this, if it's still out there, buy it. Just buy it. It is that simple. Don't hesitate. Pull the trigger and buy it. To me, again, I do love the MGP profile. That is something, I'm a big fan of MGP. But this one just takes it to the next level. The flavors in this thing are just, the first time I tried it, they had sent me a sample to review along, I think, with the batch 4 and the American whiskey. And when I had tried this, I knew that this was something special, from the time I nosed it, from the time, it rolled onto my tongue and into the finish. The palate is it's superb. It really is. It covers all areas. There's flavors that are packed on the front, the middle, and to the back of the palate, all the way into the finish. It's silky. The finish is long. Just overall craftsmanship. Yes, it is on the pricey side, but again, we go back to that main thing, and that is the quality of bourbon that is inside the bottle. Again, like I said before, it is more than a brand. It's more than a fancy bottle. It is what's inside that makes that difference. That is the game changer. Is what is inside this bottle right here. Again, it's in my top 15 bourbons I have ever tried. And this is why the Old Carter Batch 5 is the #1 whiskey for me of 2020. Thank you, Mark and Sherry Carter, for everything that you guys have put into your business. You put so much into what you guys do, and it honestly shows. You have fans all over. You have a big fan of what you do right here. Again, guys, my #1 whiskey of 2020. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews and my top 10 whiskeys of 2020. I want to send a big thank you out there to the distilleries who collaborated with me this year and provided me with these samples to review on the channel. I am very grateful for that, and I definitely look forward to continuing to work with you all in 2021. I want to send a big thank you to all of my subscribers who've continued to stay by my side and support me through. Continue to provide me that support to keep going. I do this really all for you to try to give you the best damn reviews that I can. So thank you guys, for being there. Again, this was a fantastic year. Again, I was away for a little while, but I tried to come back strong and again give you guys the best reviews as possible. So with that being said, this is my top 10 list of best whiskeys for 2020. Until next time, guys, stay dusty.